Well, Tim, let's start here. You're no stranger to the reality of concussions, head trauma. Share a little bit of your story with us.
Yeah, so played tons of sports growing up. Typical Canadian kid, football, hockey, rugby, all sports where you do see a number of head injuries, and played football in college here at Harvard in Boston, and 10 years in the CFL. So certainly it's been an unfortunate reality in my life, but I'm not sure we learned or understood as much about it back then as we do now. Especially in the last 5 years.
In reading your story, you voiced in some of the research that it's about research that pinpoints who's at risks, adults, youth, and trying to get involved early in the process before trauma gets into something much worse. But how does that practically how is that practically carried out? Because it's easier just to say, but what does that really look like in a step-by-step form?
When you're talking about concussions and head injuries, there's really two different subjects that you're talking about. There's acute concussions, which receive a lot of attention, but then there's also the cumulative damage that happens over time, and are characterized really by the number of times that you get hit in the head during the course of your career is associated with your risk profile, roughly, from what we think we understand. But one of the things that we've seen anecdotally is kids who don't participate in contact sports until the age of 14 tend to do much, much better. And then I think when you look at football, which is a sport that's near and dear to all of us up here on the panel, I think we really want to look at modifying the game for the younger kids.
And I want to come back to you, Brian. You're connected with concussions. You have a history with that. Tell me a little bit about your story as well.
Yes, I mean, similar to Tim, kind of grew up multi-sport, and then you develop this passion for football. And for me, my body type, big kid, not as athletic as all the other kids on the block, being a lineman was perfect. And Tim kind of was alluding to, it's the linemen that are subject to that second kind of, issue of that repetitive damage to the brain. And I can remember those 100 Oklahoma drills in a grade school, practice where I'm bashing my head against, other kids just to make some coach feel like he's playing Madden better. You know what I mean? And to grow from that, then I was really lucky to played football at Stanford, and I've played 6 years in the CFL.
Give us a sense of what your recovery and what recovery looks like after a head trauma, after concussion, because some people may not really understand what that's like. Give us a picture of what it was like.
So the funny thing, we're kind of alluding, do we even have a chance to recover, right? At the end of the day, especially as a pro, you're playing next weekend. And a lot of stuff that comes out, we should be taking more time. So yeah, even the idea of recovery and what that means, the crazy part, I think that's still being explored. So for myself, I would just judge it as do I feel good? And I think, add a little peer pressure by teammates, and that's definitely not the best way to go about it.
The discussions being covered more and more in media. Off camera for this interview, we're talking about the kind of the grassroots push. People are getting more engaged with head injuries in sports, the links to the dangers with that. Now that we're at this kind of bridge, what does the way forward look like? Where do we go from here? So
this issue gets a lot of attention at the pro level, but with the work that we're all doing with the Concussion Legacy Foundation, a real focus actually with the pediatric population, and I think that's where the bigger problem is. I mean, there's a limited number of guys who end up playing pro football, and it's not that they're not important, and it's not that their long-term health is not important, but what I think about quite a bit is the millions of kids playing these sports every single day. And I think, what we would like to see, and, I'll speak for myself, and these guys can chime in with their thoughts on it, but sport for me was so important to my own personal development. And I learned lessons on football fields and hockey rinks that you just can't teach in a classroom. And they were so foundational to who I am today. So I think what we'd like to see is, how do we get sports where kids are able to enjoy that personal development while still being safe and not suffering any of the long-term problems that we've seen.
Andrew, quick question to you. You lead, I want to make sure I get this right, you lead the Brains and Brawn camp that teaches kids about the dangers of concussions and what to do if you have one. Hey, I was very active in sports. I've been at to those watching, I may not have the same physical appearance as these guys. I was more of a baller, but I say when you're a child, you watch what they do on the screen and you want to do it as well. How do we protect kids as athletes? How do you protect kids from what they see in terms of, hey, we want to make sure they're being engaged in sport in the right way and something that's safe? How do we paint that picture for them? Because it's monkey see, monkey do a lot of times for them.
Absolutely. As a kid, you want to emulate what you see on TV, right? I think it's important that they have the knowledge to understand how to approach doing that, right? The Brain and Brawn Camp is essentially an on-field application of what we teach in class, so to speak, about concussions and safer play. So we're actually giving these kids the opportunity to physically emulate what we've taught to them. And the more kids that we can reach with that, I think the safer the sport will become. Tackling properly, keeping your head out of it. And if they get a chance to apply that on the field, they can use that to emulate how the pros play, so to speak. One big thing that's come from it is the parents that have actually sat in on the camps, and they could take it away with them. And they could essentially reinforce that whole safe play mentality until it's ubiquitous kind of across youth organized sports.